The Frozen Dawn, Tales of the Polar Citadel. At the top of the world, where the sun danced on the edge of the horizon and the cold had a voice of its own, something unprecedented stirred. For centuries, the North Pole had been an untouched domain of eternal frost, where no human dared to venture beyond fleeting explorations. But one day, the silence of the icy wastelands was broken, not by explorers or scientists, but by something far more extraordinary, a gleaming, otherworldly vessel descending from the dark sky. The ship shimmered like a spectral aurora, its hull iridescent and massive, though its descent was silent, as if it drifted on a whisper of wind. It settled on the frozen surface without disturbing the snow, and from its interior emerged beings whose forms, though humanoid, radiated an ethereal, almost translucent glow. These were the Arcleans, an advanced extraterrestrial civilization who had come from the stars. The Arcleans had traveled the cosmos for millennia, seeking places of pristine beauty, untouched by the contamination of other species. They sought what they called the cradle of purity, a place where the very essence of the world remained unspoiled, where they could conduct their research in peace. Earth, a blue jewel hanging in the infinite dark, had long been observed from afar. And within that jewel, they had found their sanctuary, the Arctic, a frozen haven where no settlements or nations held claim. Here, amidst the eternal frost, they built their home, the Polar Citadel. The birth of the Polar Citadel. The citadel rose from the ice in a matter of days, sculpted by technology so advanced it seemed indistinguishable from magic to any human observer. Towering spires of shimmering crystal-like structures stretched toward the sky, glowing faintly under the eerie northern lights. The walls were made of a material that seemed to pulse with life, translucent and yet impenetrable. Beneath the surface, vast tunnels and chambers were hollowed out from the ice, where the Arcleans would begin their work. From a distance, the citadel appeared like an impossibly intricate ice sculpture, blending perfectly with the surrounding landscape. The choice of the North Pole was deliberate. To the Arcleans, this frozen realm represented not only physical purity, but a freedom from the influence of human civilization. The pole was a blank slate, an untouched canvas of nature's rawest form. There were no cities to disturb their peace, no pollution to taint the air, and no eyes to spy on their movements. Though the Arcleans were peaceful by nature, their presence remained a secret from humanity. Their ships and technology were hidden beneath layers of cloaking fields and distortions that ensured they could not be detected by satellites or radar. And for the time being, they confined their research to the polar regions, studying the delicate balance of Earth's ecosystems, the mysterious forces that governed its weather, and the ancient energies that lay beneath the ice. The Arcleans. The Arcleans themselves were beings of both great intellect and beauty. Tall and slender, they moved with an elegance that was almost dreamlike. Their skin, pale and faintly luminous, seemed to reflect the light of the stars, while their eyes glowed with a deep, azure radiance that hinted at their otherworldly nature. They communicated with one another through a combination of telepathy and vocal language, their voices soft and melodic, like the chiming of distant bells. Among their many gifts, the Arcleans possessed the ability to manipulate energy in ways that defied the laws of physics as humanity understood them. They could reshape matter, harness the power of the stars, and manipulate gravity at will. This allowed them to construct the Polar Citadel in a matter of days, as if the very ice and snow had been commanded to bend to their will. Despite their power, the Arcleans were gentle and curious. Their civilization valued knowledge above all else, and their purpose on Earth was not conquest or domination, but understanding. They sought to unravel the mysteries of Earth's ecosystems, to learn from its unique life forms, and to protect the purity of its natural environments. Exploration and research. For the first several months, the Arcleans limited their exploration to the Arctic itself, carefully observing the delicate balance of life in this hostile environment. They marveled at the resilience of the creatures that called the Arctic home, the polar bears that wandered the icy plains, the seals that swam beneath the frozen waters, and the migratory birds that returned each year despite the bitter cold. They studied the Earth's magnetic fields, the swirling patterns of the northern lights, and the ancient glaciers that held the secrets of millennia past. Within the citadel, the Arcleans built laboratories that merged science and art in perfect harmony. They used holographic displays to model Earth's ecosystems, mapping every detail down to the molecular level. They created energy fields that could simulate any environment on the planet, allowing them to study the effects of climate change, pollution, and human activity in real time without leaving the safety of their fortress. They were particularly fascinated by the concept of water in its frozen form. The ice of the polar regions held a unique resonance, a memory of the planet's past. To the Arcleans, this ice was more than just a frozen substance, it was a record of Earth's history, a crystalline library waiting to be read. They delved deep beneath the glaciers, uncovering ancient organisms frozen in time, some of which held the potential to revolutionize their understanding of life itself. The Purity Code. The Arcleans lived by a strict code known as the Purity Code. This philosophy guided every aspect of their existence, from the way they interacted with the natural world to the way they conducted their research. The Purity Code dictated that they could not interfere with the natural course of life on Earth, nor could they allow their presence to contaminate the environment. Their technology was designed to be completely sustainable, leaving no waste or trace of their activity. However, this code also required them to remain hidden from humanity. They had watched the rise of human civilization from afar and had seen how humanity's growth often led to the destruction of the very ecosystems the Arcleans sought to protect. For this reason, they decided that they would not reveal themselves until they had learned all they could about the planet and its inhabitants. But the world outside the Arctic was changing rapidly. Climate change was accelerating, and human activities were beginning to encroach upon even the most remote corners of the Earth. The ice was melting, the animals were dying, and the delicate balance of the Arctic was being disrupted. The Arcleans found themselves faced with a difficult decision. Could they continue to uphold the Purity Code, or would they be forced to intervene to save the planet they had come to care for so deeply? The Awakening. As the years passed, the Polar Citadel became a sanctuary of knowledge. The Arcleans had uncovered secrets about Earth's ancient past, its hidden energies, and the connections between all living things. But they had also learned about humanity's potential, both its capacity for destruction and its ability to create, innovate, and adapt. One fateful day, a small group of humans, explorers driven by curiosity and a hunger for discovery, ventured farther north than anyone had before. They came upon the outer reaches of the Polar Citadel, their instruments detecting faint traces of energy they couldn't explain. The Arcleans watched from within their walls, debating what to do. For the first time, the veil of secrecy that had protected them for so long was at risk of being torn away. As the explorers grew closer, something remarkable happened. The citadel itself, sensing their approach, began to shimmer and shift, creating illusions that made it appear as if it were nothing more than another part of the ice. The explorers, awestruck but unable to comprehend what they were seeing, recorded their findings and retreated, never fully understanding the magnitude of what they had discovered. But the Arcleans knew that this encounter marked the beginning of a new chapter. The time of isolation was coming to an end. The world was changing, and they could no longer remain detached observers. They had come to Earth for purity and freedom, but now they faced a choice: protect the sanctity of the Arctic or find a way to guide humanity toward a future where both species could coexist in harmony. And so, as the eternal winter night stretched across the pole, the Polar Citadel stood tall and silent, its spires glowing faintly beneath the shimmering auroras. Inside, the Arcleans prepared for the inevitable day when they would step out of the shadows and reveal themselves to the world, not as conquerors, but as allies. For within the heart of the frozen tundra, under the watchful eyes of the stars, a new dawn was waiting to rise, one that would forever change the course of both Earth and the Arcleans. The Frozen Dawn, the second chapter. The Polar Citadel gleamed under the swirling auroras, a testament to the Arcleans' extraordinary mastery over nature and technology. But deep within the shimmering halls, beyond the translucent walls that pulsed with ethereal light, their thoughts were not always bound to Earth. Often, their minds wandered back to their home world, the planet they had left behind in their quest for discovery and knowledge. Their planet, known to them as Arclea, was a world of unparalleled beauty and serenity. It was an ancient world, where towering spires of crystalline cities rose from lush, bioluminescent forests. The sky was painted in shades of violet and blue, and the twin suns cast long, gentle shadows over seas of liquid silver. The Arcleans had lived in harmony with their planet for millennia, guided by the Purity Code, a philosophy that centered on the balance between progress and nature, and the sanctity of all life. Arclea had once faced a great ecological crisis in its distant past, much like Earth was facing now. The rapid industrial expansion of early Arclean civilization had begun to tear apart the fragile ecosystems of their world. But they had learned, in time, to restore the balance. They turned to technology, not to conquer nature, but to heal it. They built cities that thrived in symbiosis with the forests, oceans, and mountains of their planet. Their energy came from the stars themselves, harnessed in vast collectors that orbited Arclea's atmosphere, ensuring that their world remained free from pollution and decay. The Arcleans lived long lives, filled with learning and exploration. They believed that true enlightenment came from understanding the universe in all its forms, and so they ventured into the stars, seeking other worlds to study, to protect, and sometimes to guide. Earth had been one such world, young, vibrant, and full of potential. When they arrived at the North Pole and established the Polar Citadel, they knew they had found a place of purity, a place that reminded them of their own planet before its scars had been healed. But as time passed, and the Earth changed around them, the Arcleans felt a pull to do more than observe. Their purity code still held them to non-interference, but they began to wonder, could they not bring some of their way of life to Earth, to help heal its wounds before it was too late? The transference of culture. The Polar Citadel had been their first step, a place of isolation and observation. Now, however, they began to expand their presence, bringing with them the knowledge and culture of Arclea. Their goal was not to impose their ways on humanity, but to create sanctuaries of learning and healing, places where the purity of nature could be preserved, and where their advanced technology could be used to restore the balance that was being lost. They started by building underwater sanctuaries in the Arctic Ocean. These structures, like the Citadel, were grown from the very materials of the planet itself. Ice and minerals were woven together by the Arcleans' energy manipulation, forming transparent domes beneath the water's surface. The sanctuaries glowed faintly in the dark, cold depths, resembling enormous crystal orbs nestled in the ocean depths. These sanctuaries were not just outposts, they were gateways to an entirely new world of exploration for the Arcleans. Beneath the frigid waters of the Arctic lay an alien landscape of icebergs, deep trenches, and vibrant marine life, untouched by human hands. The Arcleans, with their love for studying untouched ecosystems, marveled at the resilience of the creatures that called this cold, dark world home. The underwater world of Earth. The underwater sanctuaries became laboratories of discovery, where the Arcleans studied Earth's oceans with the same reverence they held for the frozen Arctic. They marveled at how life had adapted to these harsh environments. Strange creatures, transparent jellyfish, enormous whales, bioluminescent fish, moved gracefully through the cold waters, and the Arcleans watched with fascination. Using advanced sensory technology, they mapped the vast underwater ecosystems, discovering ancient coral reefs buried beneath the ice, caverns formed from volcanic activity, and the deep currents that acted as lifeblood to the planet. However, as they delved deeper into the Earth's oceans, they found something far more intriguing than marine life. In the depths of the Arctic Ocean, hidden beneath layers of sediment and ice, they uncovered the remnants of another civilization. It was not human, nor did it resemble any known life form on Earth. These ruins were ancient, far older than any human civilization, and far deeper than any human expedition had ever ventured. The lost civilization of the abyss. The Arcleans were stunned. Here, on this seemingly untouched world, were the ruins of another extraterrestrial species, long extinct, buried in the cold embrace of the ocean floor. The remnants they found were enigmatic, obelisks of unknown material, worn by time but still radiating faint energy signatures, strange carvings that hinted at a complex and intelligent culture, and remnants of technologies that even the Arcleans could not fully understand. This civilization had once thrived here, deep in the ocean, isolated from the surface world, much like the Arcleans had chosen to isolate themselves at the pole. The discovery was profound. The Arcleans had come to Earth as explorers and scientists, but now they found themselves in the same position as the civilization they had just uncovered. They were the second visitors, studying the remains of another advanced species, just as future civilizations might one day study the Arcleans. It was a sobering realization. The Arcleans, for all their technology and knowledge, were not the first to step upon Earth's soil, nor would they be the last. The ruins were a reminder that civilizations, no matter how advanced, could vanish, lost to time, their cultures and knowledge eroded by the forces of nature. The ocean base, a new frontier. Despite the solemnity of their discovery, the Arcleans saw opportunity in the ruins. They decided to build an advanced underwater base near the ancient civilization, creating a new hub for their research. They named it Ancoros, meaning the eternal deep in their native tongue. Ancoros was a network of domes and tunnels, suspended in the crushing depths of the Arctic Ocean, where the Arcleans could study the remains of the lost civilization and continue their exploration of Earth's oceans. The architecture of Ancoros mirrored the elegance of the Polar Citadel but was adapted for the harsh underwater environment. The domes were constructed from translucent alloys that were not only impenetrable to the ocean's immense pressure but also allowed the Arcleans to interact seamlessly with the environment. They filled the base with holographic maps, intricate models of ocean currents, and real-time simulations of Earth's climate systems. This base became their primary research hub, where they studied Earth's oceans, monitored the effects of climate change, and sought to uncover the secrets of the ancient ruins. The underwater world fascinated them even more than the Arctic surface. They discovered deep-sea vents that spewed superheated water, supporting strange, otherworldly ecosystems. The Arcleans studied these vents closely, fascinated by the similarities between the life forms they found there and certain organisms they had encountered on distant planets in their travels. Earth, they realized, was far more complex and mysterious than they had initially thought. Unraveling the mystery of the abyssal civilization. As the Arcleans investigated the ruins further, they pieced together fragments of the long-dead civilization's history. The beings that had once lived in the depths of Earth's oceans were unlike anything the Arcleans had ever encountered. They were a marine species, adapted to live in the crushing depths where no sunlight ever reached. Their technology was based on principles that even the Arcleans could scarcely comprehend, manipulating gravitational fields, creating energy from the ocean's currents, and perhaps even tapping into the planet's geothermal energy. The Arcleans hypothesized that this civilization had thrived millions of years before humanity had even evolved. The carvings on the obelisks they found told stories, tales of exploration, of building great cities in the depths, of discovering other worlds beyond their own. But then, the carvings became darker, depicting upheaval, environmental catastrophe, and a slow decline into extinction. What had caused their downfall? The Arcleans searched for answers. They found evidence of environmental degradation, suggesting that this ancient civilization, despite its technological advancements, had pushed its environment too far, draining the oceans of their resources, poisoning the waters, and eventually collapsing under the weight of its own ambition. The parallels to Earth's current situation were not lost on the Arcleans. The choice to intervene. The discovery of the ancient civilization forced the Arcleans to confront their own philosophy. They had come to Earth as passive observers, committed to the purity code, which dictated that they could not interfere with the natural course of life on any planet. But now, they saw the same signs of environmental collapse that had doomed the civilization beneath the ocean, mirrored in humanity's reckless treatment of Earth's ecosystems. The Arcleans debated among themselves. Could they remain silent and watch as Earth followed the same path to destruction? Or was it their duty to intervene, to guide humanity away from the precipice? The purity code had served them for millennia, but perhaps it needed to evolve, just as their understanding of the universe had evolved. Their decision was not an easy one. Some among them believed that humanity was too reckless, too primitive to be trusted with the knowledge that the Arcleans possessed. Others argued that humanity, despite its flaws, had the potential for greatness, just as the Arcleans had once overcome their own ecological crisis and learned to live in harmony with their planet. In the end, they chose a middle path. They would not reveal themselves fully, not yet. But they would begin to intervene in subtle ways. They would use their technology to help heal Earth's ecosystems, starting with the Arctic and the oceans. They would guide human researchers toward solutions to the climate crisis, planting ideas and technologies in ways that would seem like natural discoveries. And they would continue to study the ruins of the lost civilization beneath the waves, hoping that the lessons of the past could help them forge a better future for both Earth and themselves. A new beginning. As the Arcleans worked to integrate their culture and technology into the Polar Citadel and Anchoros, a new sense of purpose filled them. They were no longer merely visitors on Earth, they were stewards, protectors of a world on the brink of collapse. The underwater ruins served as a constant reminder of what could happen if they failed. The Polar Citadel and Anchoros became more than just research bases. They became symbols of hope, beacons of light in the frozen and submerged wilderness, where the Arcleans would continue their work to preserve the purity and beauty of the Earth. And beneath the eternal ice and the cold, dark waters, The secrets of the ancient civilization waited to be fully uncovered, offering glimpses of the past, and perhaps, lessons for the future. The Frozen Dawn, the Rogue Scientist and the Shattered Code. For centuries, the Arcleans had lived in harmony with their purity code, their strict doctrine of non-interference and preservation of natural order. It guided every decision they made and had shaped their civilization into a beacon of knowledge, purity, and restraint. But as the challenges of Earth grew more complex, and as humanity stumbled ever closer to environmental collapse, cracks began to appear in their once unshakable beliefs. Amid the glittering halls of the Polar Citadel and the tranquil domes of Anchoros, there was one Arclean who had always stood apart. His name was Kerival, a brilliant but unconventional scientist whose mind constantly buzzed with questions. His curiosity was boundless, and though he revered the purity code, he had begun to question its rigidity. He watched as his people continued their distant observations, while Earth and its inhabitants teetered on the edge of catastrophe. To Kerival, the decision to remain passive while humanity struggled seemed a betrayal of the very values the Arcleans claimed to hold dear. They had saved their own world through knowledge and intervention. Why should they deny the same to another civilization, one that was capable of growth, of learning, and, perhaps, of redemption? In secret, Kerival devised a plan. The departure. One night, beneath the glowing northern lights that danced above the Polar Citadel, Kerival stood alone in one of the observation spires, gazing out across the frozen wastelands of the Arctic. His fellow scientists were deep in debate over the latest environmental simulations, but Kerival's mind was elsewhere. He had made his decision. With a deep breath, he activated his personal craft, a small, sleek vessel designed for long-range expeditions, powered by energy fields that made it invisible to human detection. As the vessel rose silently into the sky, Kerival's heart raced. He knew that what he was about to do was forbidden. The Purity Code prohibited any direct contact with the native civilizations of the worlds they studied. But Kerival had long come to believe that the Arcleans were hiding behind their code, using it as an excuse to avoid responsibility. Earth needed help, and if his people wouldn't provide it, then he would. He flew south, leaving behind the safety of the Arctic Circle, heading for the heart of human civilization. His target was one of Earth's centers of scientific knowledge, a research facility on the outskirts of a sprawling human city. Kerival had chosen it for its isolation and the intellectual openness of its researchers. If anyone on Earth would be willing to listen, to learn without fear, it would be them. Kerival's ship landed in a remote forest near the facility, cloaked in shadow and silence. He stepped out into the cool night air, a shimmering figure against the darkness, his luminous skin faintly reflecting the moonlight. For the first time, an Arclean would walk among the humans. First contact. Kerival approached the facility cautiously, using his advanced knowledge of human technology to bypass the rudimentary security systems. Inside, he found a group of scientists working late into the night, engrossed in their research. He stood in the doorway, unnoticed at first, until a sudden surge of energy from his presence triggered their instruments. The humans turned, eyes wide with astonishment and fear, but Kerival raised a hand, his telepathic voice reaching out to them before he spoke a word. "Do not be afraid. I mean you no harm." The words echoed in their minds, calm and soothing, and the scientists hesitated. Kerival could feel their skepticism, their disbelief at what stood before them, but he could also sense their curiosity, their yearning for answers. He introduced himself as a visitor from beyond the stars, and though the humans were hesitant at first, his calm demeanor and the gentle radiance of his form slowly disarmed them. Over the next few hours, Kerival shared with them the wonders of the Arclean civilization, how his people had learned to live in harmony with nature, how they had solved the environmental crises that threatened their own world, and how they had been watching Earth, hoping that humanity would find its own path to balance. He offered them knowledge, technologies that could help reverse the damage done to the planet, insights into climate science, and new energy sources that could replace the destructive fossil fuels that were poisoning the air and seas. The scientists were overwhelmed but grateful. They understood the magnitude of what Kerival was offering, but they also knew the risks. If the world learned of this extraterrestrial contact too soon, it could lead to panic, chaos, and exploitation of the very knowledge that was meant to heal. So they agreed to work with Kerival in secret, to carefully introduce the Arclean knowledge into human science, slowly, subtly, so as not to disrupt the fragile balance of the world. Kerival's mission was a success. But he knew the real challenge lay ahead, returning to the Polar Citadel and facing the consequences of his actions. Exile. When Kerival returned to the Arctic, he was immediately summoned before the Council of Elders, the governing body of the Arcleans. The council was ancient and revered, and its members were the keepers of the purity code. They had learned of Kerival's actions through the energy signatures left by his ship and the subtle shifts in the Earth's magnetic fields that his contact had caused. His transgression was undeniable. In the great chamber of the citadel, Kerival stood before the council, his head bowed in humility but his heart resolute. The elders were silent for a long time, their luminous eyes fixed on him, their thoughts clouded with disappointment and anger. "You have broken the code," the head elder said finally, his voice ringing with quiet authority. "You have interfered with the natural course of a civilization, an action we have long vowed never to take." Kerival met their gaze, his voice steady as he responded, "I did what I believed was right. Earth is on the verge of collapse. They need our help, and we have the knowledge to save them. How can we stand by and watch them destroy themselves when we have the power to make a difference?" The council was unmoved. For them, the code was sacred, a guiding principle that had kept their civilization safe and prosperous for millennia. Kerival's defiance was seen as a dangerous precedent, one that could unravel the careful balance they had maintained. After a long deliberation, the council reached its verdict: Kerival was to be exiled from the Polar Citadel, banned from returning to his people until further notice. His actions were too grave to go unpunished, but the council, in its wisdom, chose not to cast him out completely. He would remain in the Arctic, allowed to continue his work in isolation, but without the support or resources of the Arclean civilization. For Kerival, the exile was bittersweet. He had expected it, but he had also hoped that his people would understand. As he left the citadel, the cold Arctic wind biting at his skin, he felt the weight of his decision, but also the hope that, one day, the Arcleans would see the value in what he had done. The turning point. Months passed, and Kerival continued his work in isolation. The human scientists he had contacted made slow but steady progress, integrating Arclean knowledge into their research. The changes were subtle at first: new energy sources, more efficient environmental policies, and breakthroughs in climate science. But the impact was undeniable. The data coming back to the Polar Citadel showed that Earth's climate, once in freefall, was beginning to stabilize. The council could not ignore the results. Slowly, a quiet debate began to emerge among the Arclean leadership. Had Kerival been right? Could the purity code, so sacred for so long, be reconsidered in the light of this new reality? Was it possible that their isolationist stance had outlived its purpose? Finally, the council reached a decision. They summoned Kerival back from exile. His actions had proven more effective than they had imagined, and though his methods had been unorthodox, they could no longer deny the positive impact on Earth. The elders met in a solemn assembly, and for the first time in centuries, they made the decision to amend the Purity Code. The new directive was carefully worded. The Arcleans would be allowed to share their knowledge with humanity, but only in ways that would not disrupt the natural development of Earth's civilizations. They would offer guidance and technology, but they would not interfere in political matters, wars, or cultural evolutions. Their role would be that of quiet mentors, ensuring that Earth could heal and thrive without falling into the same traps that had doomed other civilizations before. Kerival had done what no Arclean before him had achieved. He had changed the course of his people's history. A new era of cooperation. With the revised code in place, the Arcleans began to interact with humanity more openly. They established diplomatic channels with Earth's scientific institutions, though their existence was still kept from the general public. Quiet meetings were held, and knowledge was exchanged. Humanity, guided by the wisdom of the Arcleans, began to make rapid strides in healing the planet. New technologies were developed to clean the oceans, renewable energy became the norm, and ecosystems once on the brink of collapse began to recover. And yet, true to their principles, the Arcleans remained in the background, never asserting control or making their presence felt beyond the scientific communities they worked with. Their influence was subtle, their hands always light, ensuring that humanity's growth remained its own. Kerival, once the outcast, became a hero to both his people and to the humans he had helped. He continued his work, not as an exile, but as a bridge between two worlds, an embodiment of how one act of defiance, guided by the courage of conviction, could change the destiny of an entire planet. The Polar Citadel, once a place of pure observation, now stood as a beacon of cooperation between two civilizations, bound not by conquest or domination, but by shared knowledge and a mutual desire to preserve the beauty of their worlds.